It's an honor and privilege to be part of Beyond the Obvious TEDx Season X Street. The wheel of time, from wheel under my heels to the wheelchair and to the unveiling of the purpose of human life. As the CEO of a very large multi-billion-dollar enterprise in the Middle East, airports were my second home. Time zones were my calendar, and motion and mobility defined success. Imagine this scene, Terminal 3, Dubai. I used to run through the corridors of the terminal with a laptop bag strapped on my right shoulder, sometimes the ticket between my teeth, and on the phone in my left hand. Jet-setting transcontinental journeys, landing, not bothering about jet lag, and rushing to meetings with a mission-driven purpose of conversions. Conversions of conversations, conversions of deals, conversions of opportunities, and conversions of everything to the so-called worldly success. And boom, life 3 months back took a turn. The wheels under my heel turned. I had a near fatal accident 4 months back, where in a freak incident in the parking lot of a taxi ride, the taxi driver backed up and my leg went under the rear wheel. Not knowing what happened, and as a person who always was known as wheels under his heel, I suddenly saw my entire life and world crumbling around me. I had no sense what happened to me, but later the doctors told me that I had almost lost mobility of my right foot. It was a major accident leading to multiple metatarsal fractures and Lisfranc segment tears. And medicine, modern medicine, one of the greatest innovations and inventions in this world was the only recourse. My mind rushed through metals to screws, through metal plates, and God knows what all technology has brought in today in terms of robotics. And as one of the thought leaders and pioneers of robotics and AI in surgery, I myself became an end user of this technology. So I thought. When I paused and I reflected, the wheel turned again. A very famous humanitarian spiritual leader entered my life and gave me an alternative medicine route. As a medical practitioner myself, I'm not against anything of modern medicine. I would not advise medically to believe just in the power of healing. But healing is something which is so inherent, which is so innate in our own inner self, and that is the choice I took, of course, under strict medical supervision and physical examination of allopathic doctors. The wheel turned again, and instead of the hospital bed and the surgery, I found myself virtually in kitchens of one of the largest nation free feeding programs called Anand Bhojanam, where 5 lakh children were being fed every single day. I got an opportunity to be a virtual volunteer, and that is when the wheel turned again. The healing had started. Being a pioneer of robotics, AI, and technology at scale, I've been used to bringing the human in loop, especially in healthcare scenarios, even in the most complex surgeries. And for once, I found myself as a human in the loop in a humanitarian initiative where we were feeding virtually, and I was running the campaign virtually from my bed. Technology scales exponentially, and the healing continued. When I asked myself, why can I not use the same technology to scale virtually through the power of artificial intelligence, the very same work which I would do as a jet setter with wheels under my heel? But as I sat on the wheelchair, I suddenly realized that life had brought me to the crossroads where mobility did not any longer define success. Healing became something which was incremental. And I learned certain lessons through this process. I learned lessons of pausing, of reflecting, of not saying yes. I learned that compassion is not just a virtue to state, but compassion is something which has to be flexed as a human muscle to help people who don't know you and who will never know who you are. And lastly, the lesson which I learned was self-care, self-investment is as important a trait. It is not to be indulged in self-care, but it is something which helps build your inner infrastructure. We build businesses, we scale monuments, we scale technologies, but without this inner anchor, without scaling that, the healing would not be complete. I'm not healed, as I would like to conclude, completely. I am healing, but the process has been a tremendous learning for me. If I look at the word heal, it has taught me humility, it has taught me empathy, it has taught me to be amicable to people in need. It has been a great learning journey, HEAL, and above all, it has turned me to humility. I'm not asking that you need to lose a foot. I'm not asking that you need to lose your mobility. I'm not asking that you need to stop the race in which we are all part of. But sometimes when life makes you pause, makes you reflect, you realize what is the inner purpose. And that is when the third wheel in me started in motion. And it continued in motion, whether I was in motion or whether I was on a wheelchair. And that was the wheel of dharma, the wheel of purpose. There's a Sanskrit saying, Paropkara idam shariram, the body is meant to serve. And that has been my greatest learning in this entire journey. Without surgery, through the power of service, through the power of self-healing, I have stood before you today to share my story. But let me leave you with a thought that service and scale without a soul is just empty noise. What we need is the rhetoric of healing, and healing which touches not just the ones around us, but touches everybody. The wheel of time, from the wheels under my heel to the wheelchair, to the wheel of purpose. I would only like to say that healing is such a beautiful process which teaches you patience, it teaches you mindfulness, it teaches you to just to be, to pause. And sometimes life is just to be, it is just to pause, it is just to heal, and above all, just to serve. Thank you very much.